Welcome to the Simply Love Jesus podcast, where we learn what it means to love God and love people. My name is Caleb, and you are about to listen to an amazing conversation between myself and Christy Wood. Christy is the author of Revolves. I will link the book in the description to this podcast so you can read it yourself. It's absolutely amazing. But me and Christy have a conversation about her book, her life, her experience growing up in a Christian cult, getting out of that, and even the similarities that we see between what she grew up in and what we are experiencing today. It's a wonderful conversation. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And as always, send me a message if there's anything I can do to pray for you. Now, so what do you do for fun lately? Like, what's been fun for you?
What do I do for fun? I have a very busy life right now. I'm a mom and a wife, and I work. For fun, it's not winter anymore, but in the winter I was taking a lot of walks and snowshoes and cross-country skiing and stuff like that. Probably right now I'm working in my flower beds, which doesn't sound super fun, but
oh no, that is fun.
It's relaxing.
I have been really into, for the past several years, I've been growing a bonsai tree.
Oh, nice.
And so that just got me really big into. It was actually really helpful for mental health, because several years ago I was dealing with a lot of crazy depression, which I've dealt with my whole life, but it was really bad these last several years. Part of me just kind of going off the grid, and when I was kind of at my lowest, I found gardening and just growing a tree was actually really beneficial to help me recapture some mental health, because it kind of attached my mental health to this little tree that I had. And as it began to grow, I felt myself growing at the same time. It was really cool parallel. So
that's awesome.
With your flower beds, are you planting anything specific, or are you just gardening, just whatever?
I mean, I'm in Michigan right now, so right now it's more just you're tearing out all the gross stuff. So I've been in this battle with plants and then animals and slugs and mold. So my first year at our new house, I fought deer and rabbits, and they were just eating everything, and it was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
So last year I bought this really stinky, awful spray that you can spray on the plants, and then they kind of absorb it into their little leaves, and they taste terrible. And so I got the deer and rabbits to leave me alone. They were totally leaving my garden alone. But then the slugs showed up in force, and they devoured a bunch of my really great plants.
Oh,
and
no.
this mold showed up, and so I was like, all right, that's it. I'm digging out all the mulch. So this spring I've been taking out wheelbarrowfuls of mulch out of this garden, trying to get rid of the slugs and the mold.
Oh.
But I bought more spray this year too, so I'm
Good.
I'm gonna win this year.
That's right. I love that. I'm really looking forward, because once we finish building our house, our next step is then going to be landscaping, because we're really passionate. Kenzie bakes sourdough bread, and she'll make her own butter. And since I live on this little island, the beach is I can throw a rock and hit the ocean. So I go and I just get a gallon of seawater, and I make sea salt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really great. And so we decided we were going to start doing a bunch of fruit trees. I'm going to plant an olive tree, an orange tree, and maybe an avocado tree, and then
nice.
We'll plant some strawberries and just a bunch of random fruits and stuff. And it's gonna be a really fun journey to start gardening, especially as our daughter starts to grow up, and just get to show her all the cool things of life. It's gonna be such a fun journey. I actually finished reading your book the other day, and I loved it. Revolves was such a well-written book, and such a it was just paced really well. I found it so easy to read, and I found it just so enticing. And I'd love for you to share just a little bit about how long ago was it that you wrote that book?
I published it in 2023.
And have you been satisfied with the results of because I know when I first came out with my first book, I was I maybe this was for you. I don't know. For me, I published my first book, Simply Love Jesus, in 2021, and I'd been writing it for 7 years. And the day that I released it, we had a big release party. It was a big hoopla. And then as soon as I got home, the first thing I thought to myself was, well, what's next? And I remember actually getting so depressed by that I just so quickly had spent so much of my life writing this thing, wrote the book, had the big hoopla, and then the moment it was all said and done, I just so quickly moved on from it. And I was curious if that was an experience that you had as well. And if not, I'd love to know what your experience was.
Yeah, no, I never really wanted to write a book. So I spent 10 years writing religious rebels. And like for the first 4 to 5 years, it was more like Jesus was like dragging me along and like, you're going to write a book. And I was like, I don't want to write a book. And I got really stuck in the whole just publishing system, just because it was so hard to even get traction in traditional publishing at all. So, you go into it with such a naive idea of like, I'm going to write a book. And then you start going to writers' conferences and talking to people in the industry, and you're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like, nobody knows who you are. You don't have a platform. You don't have a website. All these things that you don't have at first. And so I feel like I just would get discouraged and like stop writing. And then I would get re-inspired and write some more. About 3 or 4 years into my journey of writing, we went through this huge spiritual abuse thing at the church where my husband youth pastored. And he ended up getting fired. For no reason, just one of those classic stories that you hear.
Yeah,
just
numbers
the same,
aren't
the
enough.
same. Yep, just the same thing, the same stories of like, you're not getting along with this abusive, narcissistic head pastor who just decides to get rid of you in a sneaky sort of way, so no one knows the truth. Just all of that, and that just broke me. And the book that I wanted to write before that, I'm really glad it didn't come out. Like, I'm glad that one is not the one I wrote, because I wanted to tell my story about leaving the cult, but before I got broken by religious Christianity and normal evangelicalism, I was just very prideful. I still had like an idea of like, I was in a cult and I love Jesus. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, why can't you just like love Jesus? And then going through the devastation that we went through, it was about a year of spiritual abuse, and then the firing, and it was a secret for 2 months. I couldn't tell anybody we were being fired.
The NBA, yeah. Yeah.
And then we were fired, and they were like, but you still have to stay through June and keep doing youth group. But then we were too sad, so they were like, you're too sad, you need to leave now because you're making a mess of the church because you're so sad. It just literally was just like one thing after the next. It's almost comical to like think back on all of the just ridiculous things we experienced. But yeah, it broke me. And it broke me to the place where I was willing to listen and learn from people I didn't think I agreed with. And so I started reading some of the classic deconstructioners, like Rachel Held Evans, and a few more people who had written books right around her time when she was writing her first book. And like, I didn't always agree with their end, like, idea, but I understood how they got there.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I know how that you got here now. And I just feel like it broke me. It broke me, it humbled me. And in my reconstruction process and deconstruction process after that, that's where religious rebels came from. So it came from that place of brokenness, and I think you can hear that in my words. Like, as you read the book, I think you can kind of tell that I'm like,
yeah, and you do a good job of capturing
more broken.
Yeah, you do an amazing job of capturing the emotion, and I think it was one of the things that initially sparked the desire to have the conversation, but that mutual idea of like that Lego piece set. Yeah. And the idea of our faith being like a Lego set, and is the idea that like you explain it better. Where did you come up? What was the day that you had that idea? Was it just while you were writing and it just struck you? But tell me about that.
I wrote the Lego description of deconstruction on a blog post first, actually. And then a lot of my blog posts ended up becoming the book, which I think happens for a lot of people. So a lot of the things that I wrote in those chapters were originally written on my website or on my blog. And then they were kind of just, the ideas were incorporated. And so that Lego description is actually from a blog post. But I was sitting in my mother-in-law's basement because we lived with her for about 18 months while we tried to get our house bought and sold and all that good stuff. And I think I was just looking at my son's Legos on the floor, and I was really processing the deconstruction and just the way that I saw so many in the deconstruction community assuming that deconstruction meant going this direction, and kind of a very narrow understanding of what that meant. And I was like, if you deconstruct, then you're going to look like this and you're going to end up here and whatever. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I've done a lot of deconstruction in my life. I would say I've been through maybe 4 seasons of deconstruction, like starting back way before we even used that word. And like I'm still a pretty Orthodox Christian.
Yeah.
Like, I hold a lot of the creeds, and I hold to these cores of Christianity that are across denominations. And have I reconstructed and deconstructed? Yeah, I absolutely have. I've left a ton of things behind, a ton of tradition and religion, but at the center of that, like I said, that Lego, there's this original design of Christian faith that just gets added to. Pieces get added to it, and they get added to it, and they get added to it. And so to me, like, deconstruction is necessary. Yeah. Like, we have to deconstruct this evangelical Christianity that we have right now, because it's pretty far away in a lot of senses from true Christianity and from who Jesus is. And so we have to take it apart. But just because you've deconstructed all those pieces into the little pieces, like, doesn't mean you have to just throw them in a pile and walk away. Doesn't mean you just throw them away. It means you can, if you want to, look at Scripture and try to rebuild as best as we can a faith that is genuine and authentic.
Yeah. And I think you I can't remember which page it was, but you said something along the lines, or at least this is why I took away from it when I was reading it, was the idea that we shouldn't be afraid of deconstruction because, what was it? It was something, essentially this is what I took away from it, was the idea that a faith that is allowed to be questioned is an honest faith.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but it was something along the lines of that. Yeah. And it just struck me where it was just like, yeah, like, if you're not willing to question your faith, if you're not willing to sit down and examine all of the things for yourself, it's not a trustworthy faith. I actually wonder if it is a sense of fear that we're afraid of what we'll discover if we break apart and we take off all these pieces and we examine them and we know where this piece came from, and I know the history of where this piece came from. I often wonder if it's because of fear, that fear of I won't like what I'll see. And if I don't like it, then, and I think even you've experienced, I would say you probably speak a lot into this, especially in cultish like Christianity, there is this sense of you fear your own emotions. You fear your own judgment. You fear, because we're hammered into us this, like, you're inherently sinful, you're broken, you can't trust your heart, the heart is deceitful. Mm-hmm. You hear all of these things, and yet that detaches itself from the reality that, but aren't you supposed to have the Holy Spirit? Isn't the whole point of being renewed by the Spirit of God to know that you can trust the voice that's within you? You can trust the thing. So now there's this disconnect, and I don't know if you want to, if you want to speak more on that, but there's something there.
No, I think fear is almost always at the basis of any kind of ultra religious, high control system. I think absolutely. And I do think that people are afraid to begin to examine their faith because, like you said, if I start to take it apart, what if it all falls apart? I think there's a literal fear of, like, but if I start to question it, like, what happens if it all falls apart? And I don't know. I mean, the God that I've found and the God that I've experienced and the way that I see Scripture these days, like, it's not going to fall apart. Like, there is something so strong that's continued for the last 2,000 years. Like, it's hard enough and strong enough to be questioned, to be taken apart, and to be examined. And it's going to be found at the core, the truth. It's going to be found solid.
What does it say about my belief in God if I don't think that God can handle my questions?
Absolutely.
What does it say about my faith in God if I think that by asking questions, what happens if I take this piece and I don't like what it looks like, I don't like its history, and I don't like this, whatever. What does it say about my God if that is somehow enough for me to just lose faith entirely?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's wild to me. My dog's wild. But one of the things that I did want to ask you as I was preparing for this conversation is, I think it's easy to say, well, how do you look at faith now in comparison to before? But I'd love to know if you could you compare what gave you life about faith in Jesus in the church and then the abusive church that you were in before? What made you even want to stay, or the things that was life-giving there? And how does that compare to the life that you feel like you have now in faith?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that my entire faith journey has always been somehow connected to this very real person of Jesus Christ. Like meeting Jesus when I was 15, still in the cult, still within this very high control religious system, and yet coming face to face with this unexplained presence of God. Okay, if he's real, if he's not just this idea or concept or, the name on a page of an old book, if he's real, I want to get to know him. And so me spending time getting to know Jesus for the next couple of years was what led me to the place where I was like, this is not God. This Jesus I know and the God they're talking about don't line up. Like, I need Jesus. And so every time I've gone through a place where I've had to just question and wonder and doubt, it just comes back to the fact that like I have had this relationship with Jesus that has developed and grown and changed as I've gotten to know him better and understood who he really is and thrown out these ideas about him that aren't accurate. But like at the core, he's always been there, and he's always been way more good and way more gracious and way more loving than I ever imagined him to be. And every time that I was at my most broken, like he was there. So there's been seasons of my life where I'm like, do I even believe this anymore? Is any of this actually accurate? And like, even in the middle of that, whether it's a day or two later or something, like I just have this nudge of like, no, you can't. I feel like Peter, like where else would I go? Like you have the words of life. I know you, I can't leave you. And so even in our abusive church situation where there was a time when I was like, I would be way more comfortable to just stop being a Christian. Like I am betrayed. I don't know what I can trust or who I can trust or if any of this is actually real. I'd rather just be done. Like I'm done. I couldn't be done because Jesus, like how do you leave Jesus?
That call just pulls you back.
Yeah, it just pulls me back. And so I would say it's always been about Jesus and he's always given life. But I would definitely say that as I understand that he's not looking for my behavior, that he's not looking for my perfection, that he's not looking for me to get it right before I can come to him, that he's not looking for me to have it all together. It's just gotten more life-giving. And as I've been able to understand that there might be things I don't get, not having an answer for everything is kind of scary, but I don't think we need to have answers for everything. I think there's things that we can just be like, well, don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like this and it kind of looks like this. And I think maybe they're both, but they don't really look like they fit together, but I don't know. And Mike Cosper just wrote a book talking about ideology, the church in dark times, what it's called. And he talks about just the idea of comprehensibility. And so like in our world, we think everything is comprehensible. Like we are just in 2025, we're like, I can comprehend everything. And we just have this idea of like people have this higher knowledge now. We can understand everything. Everything is, has a reason and an answer and it's logical. And he's like, we're missing the mystery because we think we can comprehend everything. And the truth is we can't, right? We watch and see what happens with our conspiracy theories and all of our stuff that we come up with because we're just so sure we have answers for everything. We can't comprehend it. And we need to be willing to live in a place of mystery.
Yeah.
And tension and paradox and things that don't make sense because we are just little humans. And sometimes we have this like really big idea of who we are and we kind of make God small instead of recognizing like he's big and crazy and we're just little. And so it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't get it.
I love that.
And so that gives me life.
I love that. Because that resonates even a lot with something I was telling Kenzie the other day, where I was telling her how we have been conditioned in our modern westernized society, in our modern American evangelicalism. We have been conditioned to cling to certainty.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because Christ calls us to live in the mystery. Christ calls us to live in the uncertain. You notice that Jesus always speaks in parables. It's never, yes, he says, don't worry about your life, but he talks about, think about the birds. How often do you just go bird watching? How often do you just sit and just think about the birds? How often he always has these mysteries and never has answers. And there's so many, for all the things that Jesus talks about, there's so much he doesn't say. And there's so much that he leaves it. And I think he desires this uncertainty because it calls us to trust in the Holy Spirit, but it also calls us into faith. I mean, the fact that we don't have anything physically written by Jesus, I think is intentional. I think the reason that you can't prove, there's no physical, historical, definitive evidence that proves that Jesus rose from the grave. And I actually believe that was by design. You have all these apologists that want to say that here's all these things that prove that Jesus was real. We have this account, this. We have all these things, all these evidence, but in the grand scheme of actual scholarship, it falls flat. Because at the end of the day, we just don't have the evidence. And I think that's by design, because we look at how much damage the church has done with a bunch of maybes. And imagine how much more damage would be done if you knew for certain. I don't know. I think that, like you said, Christ calls us into that mystery. Jesus calls us into the unknown. He calls us into the uncertain, because that's where you truly have to trust. And that's why I think sometimes we turn the Bible into an idol. We idolize this certainty. This is what the Bible says. We want this certainty because it can justify the ways that it clings to our me-focused nature, as I phrase it a lot. It speaks to this desire where we desire to damage other people, to harm other people, to hurt other people, because I can cling to this is what it says. And therefore, if this is what it says, you have to obey. But if I am now in the uncertain, I'm held responsible for my own actions. I'm held responsible for the things that I do. It brings you back to Genesis chapter 3, or Genesis chapter 4, where it says sin is crouching at the door, but you can which tree will you choose? Will you choose the tree of life and trust, Proverbs chapter 3, that wisdom is like a tree of life, and that's this intentional connection being made to show that the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil was about wisdom. Whose wisdom will you trust? God's wisdom or your wisdom? And if you trust in God's wisdom, it leads to life, but if you trust in your wisdom, it leads to Cain and killing Abel. It leads to death. I don't know. I feel like when you embrace the mystery, things actually open up so much more. When you embrace the mystery, you get to look at things so much different. Whereas before, we almost look at it like a math equation, and I look at it like geometry.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, and even the way people read the Bible, you read it in this very literal, in English, in my understanding, in my Western 21st century understanding, in English, and we take it literally, and we don't notice the fact that, this was written thousands of years ago to people in a Middle Eastern society with background knowledge we don't have. And there's all these idioms in there that we don't get. And there's the way that they write in different literary, ways and genres and stuff like that. It's you can't just read it in English and be like, this literally means, sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. And so I just think about so many places where people are just reacting to the Bible and to people being so certain, like you said, about this is how it means, this is whatever, and hurting people with the Bible. And you're not even really reacting against the Bible, because you've never actually just really read the Bible. You're reacting to people teaching the Bible in this very rigid way that's not accurate. So, and once again, you have that mystery of I don't really know because the culture's really different, and and that's okay.
I love that. So to take a quick break for a second, tell me about what is it that you and what is your husband doing these days? I know he used to be a youth pastor before. So what does life look like for you now?
He's the executive director of an assisted living.
Oh, cool.
So he's been working for the same assisted living company since we left the church, actually. So this is 8 years now, in different roles. So first he was a maintenance director at a building. Then he moved into more of corporate role, and then he got sick of traveling, and so now he's actually back at the building he started with, just now as the executive director of it. It's very interesting to see how his pastor background has been really helpful as you're working with people and leading a team of people and, dealing with people
Yeah,
all the
absolutely.
time. So yeah, it's really good. I don't think he'd ever go back to being a pastor again, but he's really built for this job.
I love that. And are you like me and having 12 side gigs? Because I do.
No.
That's awesome.
I don't. I was a stay-at-home mom for years, and then I went and was a shipped shopper, which is like a personal grocery shopper.
Oh, that's so
cool. For about
cool.
3 years. I was full-time. I had 5,000 jobs under my belt before I quit. I shopped through the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
I used to hide things for people, so I would get my list of people in the morning, and they're like, oh, this person needs flour, this person needs toilet paper. I had like hidey holes around the store where I would like stick things.
Wow. That is awesome.
So I could pull it out later for my clients later in the day. And then in 2021, I went back to teaching. So I taught for 3 years, 5th grade math. And this last year I've moved into a behavior specialist role. So same school, but I'm now a behavior specialist working with all of this dysregulated children.
Oh, that's so...
who are crying and screaming and everything else.
Wow. And how old are your kids again?
They are 12, almost 13, and 14, almost 15.
Fun. I bet your husband is the youth pastor. Like his brain's now like, all right, this is the phase.
Yep. It's pretty funny. He's definitely I would say he's definitely really relishing his middle school dad role.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, what has been? Tell me a story. Or I guess the first thing that comes to mind of how you've seen your book Religious Rebels, how you've seen it give life to other people, and just confirm why you wrote this book.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think my favorite reviews or people just reaching out to me have been people. It's so funny. Okay, so I wrote this book as a girl, as a woman, and not having any idea how many men would read the book, but really hoping that it would be a book not just for women. So I've never wanted to be just a woman who writes to women. I wanted to be a person who writes to people. Yeah, and so I very clearly made sure the cover was not like feminine. I wanted it to be, for anybody, just open. And I've had numerous men, and I would say men who are older than I imagined, so 50s and 60s really, who have read the book and reached out and just thanked me and said that it just really set them free in their relationship with God.
Wow.
I know. I mean, I had a guy whose mom and dad had worked at this Bible college, and he had kind of gone on his own way, not really believing so much anymore. They sent the book to him. He's like this big biker dude. And he found me on Facebook and wrote me, and basically was just, thank you. Like, I really feel like I can come to God.
That's
like,
so
I can
cool.
Come. And I was like, what? And it's not just been that one time. Like, I have a good handful of people like that. And so just an unexpected audience that I didn't necessarily imagine that I would get to share with, but I'm honored to be sharing with.
That's so
these
cool.
Older men who are like willing to read my words as a woman, and that my words lead them to Jesus.
That's so great. Now, do you have any other books you got coming up?
I am working on one, but I cannot figure out what framework. I was actually just talking to someone the other night who's a book coach, and she's like, I'm a book coach. I should work with you on this. And I was like, yeah, I know. I want to tell more of my story, because you know that in Religious Rebels, I kind of bounce around a lot. And so it's like a piece here, a piece there, and it's not necessarily really chronological at all, or like people have a lot of questions, like how did you get out of the cult? Are your parents out of the cult? How did you get in the cult?
Your life is more like
questions.
Anecdotes to help support the purpose of the book,
yes.
less the book about this is my life.
Exactly. And so I kind of want to tell my story, but they don't like memoirs. So I got to find a framework to hang it on, if that makes sense. And I've been trying to figure out, what is my real story? Like, is the real story the cult, or is the real story more of like the spiritual abuse that just happened 8 years ago that really changed me? I think that's what it is. I think that's the story. And I think the cult is backstory to explain like why I'm still a Christian and why I was able to go through this kind of a thing, because I've already been there. So yeah, that one's simmering. I just don't exactly know, like I said, the framework of...
I'm working on a similar project slowly. There's like, I'm like juggling 7 books at once right now, because I'm just too ADD. So so what people are asking, what are you writing? And I'm like, it depends what I'm in the mood for today. So I'm either writing religious books or spiritual books, or I'm writing
children's fiction books. I'm writing a series
Nice.
called The Adventures of Captain Sillybeard.
I love it.
Yeah, so
Love it.
but I'll put that under a pen name. It'll be really fun. I'll be posting that as a pen name under Captain Sillybeard. So it's like me as the pirate is like writing my silly stories to kids, and they get to like.
It's fun.
It'll be so fun. But one of the books that I've been really slowly working on the back burner is kind of like a biography, like life story book. But I was trying to figure out how do I keep it focused, and I think for me it was I had to ask myself, what was the one thing that I kept telling myself throughout the story? If I had to minister to myself and I looked at the course of my life and I mapped out the story and I looked at all the kind of key things, what was the thing that kept me going? And I kind of created a bottom line off of that. And so for me, the book that I'm writing for that is called Anointed, the Gift of Suffering. And the bottom line that's going to kind of tie the whole book is, just as it was through his wounds that we are healed, God wants to use your wounds to bring healing to other people. And that's what it means to be anointed. So I'm going to kind of use that as like the big idea. And then I'm going to show, like, as each chapter will then kind of show different events throughout my life, and then constantly pointing to how it feeds into this idea, and then tying that with scripture and showing, like, using like, hey, let's see what scripture actually talks about what anointing looks like. There'll be a bunch of different things, but maybe that'd be an idea for you. Just like looking at start with writing your life as a story, and then how would you minister to yourself, and try to find a one simple hook, and then tie it together with that.
Exactly. I know, because I was like, I kind of want to do more of like I said, more so the stories flow, but like you have to have a framework. You have to have something else you're talking about. For a while, I thought it was going to be a book called Disgraced, dash graced, just because the definition of grace in Gothardland was so incredibly mixed up. And like much of my story is discovering genuine true grace. And so I had this idea of like talking to different pastors and priests and getting their perspective on grace, whatever. It felt really good for a while. And then as I started to really try to work it, I was like, I don't know if this is the story. Yeah. So
it'll hit you.
I don't know.
You just simmer with it. You just let it simmer and it'll hit you.
Yeah. And I have a book that I've been thinking about for years. I just don't think it's the next one. And it's called And Then I Met Jesus. And I want it to be like a bunch of other people's stories. So like people who were just doing their thing and then they met Jesus, and it was like, oh. So whether it was people who were like, I'm not going to ever be a Christian, atheist kind of people, or there's people who were like just religious Christians and then they encountered the real Jesus or whatever. I just want it to be like a bunch of like each chapter is someone else's story.
Yeah. So when you look at, now we'll kind of switch into some like more like really practical stuff here. Clearly there's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah, I know. My story is more and more relevant.
It's more and more relevant every day. I think specifically even within like the deconstruction world, we've already got a lot of stuff going on. When you look at kind of everything that's kind of been happening lately, not just within the world and government and all that stuff, but specifically even within religious space, and you look at deconstruction and you see how some of these things even are starting to fall apart a little bit. What's kind of been jumping out to you? Have you seen some kind of like connection, and are you making like connection points behind the scenes, and what's jumping out to you with that?
Yeah, I mean, you know what's going on right now within the deconstruction community, and like how it's the new evangelicals weren't exactly new kind of thing, just the whole thing. I really think that what's jumping out at me is that within these people who are disillusioned with evangelicalism for good reason, and who are wanting to leave a conservative version of Christianity, that what happens is we're not actually deconstructing deep enough. We're not actually asking the right questions, because we end up just flipping the sides. Like you're like, I'm here and now I'm here. And you're like, nothing changed. You just changed sides, or like you're just taking the wrapping paper off of the box and then putting new wrapping paper on. Like we're not actually digging into the parts of us that we talked about already, the fear, the need for certainty, the I'm right, you're wrong, the black and white dualism of the way we were raised as evangelicals, the way that we're right, no one else is right. Everyone else is wrong. And so when you get into these spaces sometimes within the deconstruction community, now instead of being conservative, you're progressive. But like the same, like we're now right and all those people are wrong is still there. And like there's still this hierarchy and there's still this dualism and there's still this, and I just think that we're not going deep enough.
Do you think that it might, part of the reason that sometimes deconstruction can seem so attractive to other people is because we're looking for someone to yell at?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's this desire, like I forget who wrote the book. Oh, it's gonna kill me. I didn't read the book, but the title itself I just thought was good enough. You ever read a book? Like, I never read the book, but the title itself was so good that I felt like I read it just in the title. It was Ministry in the Age of Outrage.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't remember who wrote it, but that title struck me so hard, with just the age of outrage. I don't even know what was in the book, but I know that struck out to me. It was like, we're addicted to outrage. I mean, we it's the consumerism within us, the desire to capitalism. I was just talking to a friend, Stefan, the other day, who's connected with this the like new monastic order, which is really cool.
I actually just followed him on Threads.
He's super great guy. He we every Tuesday night we just do prayer hour. We just have a good time where we just gather, we just pray. And so if you ever want to join us, feel free. We have it like on my Discord server. So every Tuesday night we're just like, hey, it's time to pray. That's all it is. And so, but we were just talking the other day about all this stuff going on, and we were talking about how like it's this addiction to capitalism. We capitalize on these moments in our life, and I often wonder if it's just we want just someone to yell at. And I think there's this deep-rooted anger that is not being addressed. And I think one of the things that I wrote about in Letter to the TikTokians, which was a whole big TikTok project that I came out with, and then soon as I can actually get the cover designed, I'll come out with it as like a free just like pocketbook. But one of the things I wrote in it is that anger is the thief, or anger is the grief of lost joy. Was it stolen joy? Whatever. Anger is the grief of stolen joy. There's something that was robbed from us, and I wonder if like you said, there's something deeper there, and I just don't know what questions we're not asking. But sometimes, I don't know. How do you think that we get to that deeper rooted problem? How do you think we get to ask? Like, we're asking the wrong questions. How do we ask the right questions?
Well, I think we're so stuck on the right and wrong beliefs that we're not getting down to like the part where you just are having a space to hold my beliefs and be okay with you having different beliefs. And like it's not that there's no any peace or just certainty in myself or just like feeling confident in like, this is who I am and I'm okay if you are like that. There's not, I think it really just comes down to fear. I think we're still afraid. I don't think we've deconstructed our fear. Like, I think that fear you talked about is still there. I think that our desire to have answers is still there. Our desire to feel secure in those answers is still there. And we haven't really gone deep enough to say, hey, why am I so stuck on this or that? That it's us versus them. Why does it only have to be black and white? Like, we aren't comfortable with paradox. We're not comfortable with tension and mystery. It comes back to that again. Like, we can't just say, I don't know, and be okay with that. We have to have an answer for things. And then if you don't have the same answer, now you're threatening me. And, anger is a secondary emotion. Like, anger is a secondary emotion. There's usually another emotion first. And I think there's some guilt and shame in there. I think there's fear in there. I think there is grief in there. But I think there's probably a lot of woundedness that we're just not willing to deal with. I think we've been wounded by religion. I think we've been wounded by guilt and shame. And I think we've been wounded by our own insecurities and our lack of connection. And so instead of wanting to actually deal with that woundedness, we just want to be angry at someone else. Because it takes a lot of humility and it takes a lot of pain and digging through stuff to actually heal. And I think we're often not willing to do that hard work.
Yeah. The question that just struck my mind as you were talking was, whose expectations are you not meeting?
Yeah.
And I think
Well, it's not God's, because he doesn't have extra expectations of
right.
us.
Yeah. I almost wonder if sometimes we have to ask ourselves, whose expectations are we trying to meet? And maybe that's why we're angry. Maybe it's because we have this fear that I'm not going to achieve, I'm not going to perform, I'm not going to meet the expectations of someone. For me, this was a huge part of my like deconstruction, reconstruction journey, was fully embracing that while I've given up so much for my relationship with God, there was a huge conflation of God's approval and the approval of the church or pastor
absolutely.
or whoever. And that conflation, always feeling like, when I was younger, I've been I know we don't know too much about each other, but like short backstory of me was I was a pastor since I was 17 years old. And that happened because when I was 15 years old, my youth pastor discipled me, and we started evangelizing to teenagers all over our city. Our church kind of exploded, and then, lo and behold, when I was 17 years old, my youth pastor groomed and had an affair with a student who was one of my friends. And so I actually kind of just in the midst of this, and this was the first time our church had dealt with something like of this large, because by this point we had grown to like a 4,000 people church. This was a huge deal. We were like the biggest church in the area. It was a huge, like, we'd never dealt with a scandal like this before. And it was kind of in that moment that I had the decision. Everyone's kind of in this state of paralysis and this kind of crisis, and I just chose to just step up to the plate. So I just took on that ownership. And ever since I was young, I always had to deal with the answer of like, how old are you? Oh, you'll figure it out later. How old are you? You'll get it later. So I constantly heard those comments of just judgment because I'm young. So I got smarter. So I started reading the Bible cover to cover. And then there was 1 time, 2 times, 7 times later, before I even graduated high school, had read the Bible cover to cover 7 times. So I got smarter. And then it was, well, I really want to, communicate. I really want to be able to preach the gospel to people. I want to share my story. I want people to know the God's kingdom. And so, but, you work really hard and nobody gives you the opportunities that you're seeking. So, well, maybe I'm just not a good enough communicator. So then I worked really hard to learn every communication methods possible. I want to be able to speak in front of thousands of people. And there were times that I definitely did that. But it was constantly chasing the measure up. Well, I'll buckle up and I'll show you I can be smart enough. I can be smarter than you. I can preach better than you. I can do this, but I can, even in my own purity where I, save myself until marriage and all these different things. I was checking, like I was making sure I was squeaky clean. Like no one's got anything on me. And finally that pressure just broke down. And I think part of it was recognizing that, man, who would I talk to if I really only cared about God's approval? How would I live? What would I do if I really only cared for God's approval and I didn't care what anyone else thought? I spent most of my life living in a glass box. What would I do if I just didn't care about what people saw? What would I do if I just only did what God wanted me to do? And that's when the thing just started kind of crack open, and I began to start allowing myself to question things that I hadn't questioned before. I allowed myself to listen to different kinds of biblical scholars, not just the ones that my conservative evangelical not just the one, not just the approved textbook readings that Moody Bible Institute would love me to have. Like it is like allow me myself to take in as much knowledge as I could from all different sources. Like what would you do if you didn't have to live for the approval of the church? And that was something that was really powerful for me to experience, and especially because when I've always obviously trusted God, but when I had that moment of clarity and I really started to walk in that clarity, it was incredible to see the kinds of people that I was able to meet. And it was amazing to see just how much life could be given to somebody when you really go to the places where no Christians are. Like there was this in Atlanta, if you've ever been to Atlanta, there's this bar that's literally called Church Bar, and the whole place is making fun of Christians. Like you go inside and it's the whole, like they literally have karaoke upstairs, and it's a guy on a church organ who just like plays the thing. But it's like it's in outside every single night. There's like Christians that are protesting outside of this place. But when you go inside and you just have conversations with people, and you get to listen to like their stories, and you get to listen to what they're going through, and you just share who you are, and you just get to make friends. People are so much more willing to actually hear what you have to say. I don't know. There's a whole journey for people to experience.
Yeah, for sure.
When you look at this whole climate that we're living in right now, with religiously and otherwise, what is one piece of advice, or maybe just one kind of set of good news that you would want to tell somebody?
A set of good news. I think that there is a lot of fear out there right now on every side. I see a lot of franticness, a lot of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I think that none of that is good for us. I think living in a state of dysregulation and fear and anger like is really bad for us. And I just wrote a post or an article recently about like empire is gonna empire. Like the government and power and people in power and rich people, like none of this is new.
Yeah.
Like this is exactly how humanity has been for thousands of years. Seeking power, seeking fame, seeking money, and like using that money to do whatever they want. Like this is just how the world goes. And so I don't want to be fatalistic about it and be like, oh, well, I shouldn't care. Like we need to care, obviously. But like, can we care about people that we can actually help? Like, yes, care about the world, but also like let your main emotions be for people that you can do something about. Because that doesn't mess me up as much. If I'm like, oh, I feel really bad for you, I can make you a meal. Oh, I feel really bad for you, I can give you some money. You know, like I'm actually helping you versus just me just wallowing in this like feelings that I can't do anything about. And so I think we just need to really take care of ourselves so that we can be people who take care of others. And so I would just say, try to find peace, recognize that none of this is new. Like this is what people have been doing for thousands of years. This is just how it goes. Like it's affecting us in ways that we haven't been affected as Americans in a long time, maybe ever. But like other countries have felt this. Like other places have felt this. Some places are way worse than this right now. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting just to see how much of the evangelical ideals have kind of crept into Americans on both sides, on all sides. You know, just the idea of like, well, we shouldn't have to deal with this. Like, we should be better than this. I'm like, yeah, maybe. And also just as somebody who, I was telling a friend this the other day, as somebody who has lived in super conservative Christianity and is now watching as this strange phenomenon where I got out of the cult, but now my cult is taking over. It's a very strange phenomenon. I'm also not super concerned. This sounds terrible, but I don't think it can last. This kind of stuff implodes. I watched 2 churches implode. I've watched families implode. I've watched my cultic organization implode. Like, it doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
And so, like, it
does damage for sure.
It does damage, but it doesn't actually work.
It does damage, but it doesn't last.
No.
So I guess at the end of the day, the message is persevere.
Yes, exactly.
Persevere. Push forward, persevere, because we will outlast this.
Take care of yourself, love others, and persevere. Yeah. It's not going to last.
I love that. And then last question I had for you, as we get kind of just ready to wrap up, because I don't want to take too much. I think it's already been over an hour. Something like that.
My phone's only 53 minutes, so we must have talked before that.
Well, here you go. That's good. So it's almost been an hour. But what is the best ways that people can obviously stay in touch with you, but what is something that you're really like passionate about that you really want people to be aware of? So maybe that is like your blog, or maybe that is whatever, but what's something that you want to be able to put focus on that other people can practically encourage and support you and your dreams and what you're trying to accomplish right now?
Well, that's very nice. I would say that Substack is like one of my main places that I am right now, and it's a community that I'm really enjoying. There's just a lot of writers on there and readers on there. So hop on Substack. It's just Christy Lynne Wood, like everywhere, at all places. That's where you find me. Christy Lynne Wood, Lynn with an E. I write once a week, long form, and then once a day, usually I'll just throw some kind of a short post up there. But it's just a really great place. I've met a lot of really fantastic people on there, and people are doing some really great work just in their writing. It's great. So yeah, Substack's great. I love Threads. I have a lot of fun on Threads. Once again, just words. So I've always struggled with social media. I hate like this whole like video, whatever. Like I don't have time for that. I'm a working mom I don't have time to spend 2 hours curating some stupid video that Instagram shows to like 50 people. I just don't have the time for that. And so, but like Threads and Substack is just words, and I can write words. And so I love Threads. I'm on there a lot. And just, once again, just throwing out words. So you want to connect with me and my words, that's the two places to find me. Buy my book. That's always fun too.
That's awesome. Well, Christy, thank you so much. And I think we can turn off the cameras. But before we get ready to go, or at least before we officially turn off everything, I just wanted to say, like, I love everything that you're doing. One of the things that I've really appreciated about following you and reading your book is just your genuine desire to help people not only love God, but to help them love people. Your desire to help others truly see what it means to find living water, and to have that living water be nourishing their roots, and that living water to produce good fruit. And I think that just should be so evident. And if anyone follows you, I hope that more people get to recognize the true, genuine, and gentle words that you have to share with people. I think you have a powerful way of communicating with others, and just so grateful for you and everything that you're doing. So I wanted to make sure that I told you that.
Thank you. It's so fun how, like, because I'm a very strong person, and I spent a lot of years trying to stuff that strength down and not be like the strong leader that I am.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun as I am comfortable in my strength, that I'm also more gentle. Like the fact that you just said that gentle, it's something that I've noticed about myself. Like I'm not nearly as like blunt and like ridiculous as I used to be as my younger version.
I'm still trying to work on that.
It comes with gentleness, and so that's good to hear.